All right, guys. So I have 15 years in business experience. I have a series of multiple properties. I personally write my own budget. I have a monthly budget that I follow. It has all my incomes, my expenses, anything that I have planned, trips, vacations, birthday parties, or whatever other expense that falls into that category. And I make sure that I stick to it and I follow it, right? Again, this isn't a fixed schedule. This isn't a live or die by it. It's real simple. It doesn't need to be scary. It doesn't need to be complicated. It's just a budget, and you factor in your expenses, whatever those might be. If you think, for example, that I don't know, you need a new pair of shoes, and those shoes are $80 or $100. Well, you budget into your finances. Let's say you budget in on a monthly basis that you're gonna save $20 a month or $25 a month. Then you take those 20, $25, and after 4 months, you're able to go out and buy your pair of shoes, right? You budgeted for it because that's something that you needed or something that you wanted or whatever the case is. You structure out your budget. Uh, Outside of real estate, personally, I am debt free and financially free by consequence. Right, I do work like everybody else. I have to make an income. I have bills like everybody else. But when it comes to debt, my main debt are my vehicles and my homes. Right, I'm working on getting out of vehicle debt and working out of getting out of home debt slowly but surely. I have two rental properties right now, and both tenants are assisting in paying the mortgage indirectly. Right, they pay me and I pay the mortgage. So once that's the case, I'm able to slowly continue my plan and my goal on being financially free. Uh, I manage a maintenance and repair company for intermodal shipping containers. The name of the company is World Container Services. It's a family owned business with third generation, and we've been in business for over 50 years. This has given me a hands on, real world learning when it comes to dealing with contracts, clients, negotiations, payroll, HR, workers' comp, employee management, invoicing, purchases, the billing, coordinating of labor, working with a union and certain union mechanics, keeping a synergy between the terminal and the customers. Right, it's a beautiful industry. There's tons that you can do. Very like rough and tough, I guess you could say. Very male dominant industry, right? There are some females, but it's really a male dominant industry, and I just feel very blessed to be part of it, to be able to learn and to be able to grow in it, right? If you're not learning, you're losing, guys. This is something that I firmly believe in, and every day I try to learn a little bit from the industry. I like to think that I'm contributing in a positive way, and I just try to do better. In addition to that, I have a few other side projects. One of them is a consulting business. So basically, I help align people's money with their goals, right? Depending on what they want to do, whether they want to start up a business, whether they're not sure how to do this financing, whether they need some advice on managing expenses or how to read through contracts. I sit down with them and we work everything out. Everything from budgets to debt plans, creating simple systems that work and that are easy to understand, right? Financial literacy doesn't need to be scary, doesn't need to be complicated. I'll give you an example. I have one of my most recent clients. He's a social media videographer partnering with a specific influencer. And he's relatively new at this. So he's telling me, hey, man, I don't know how to do this. They sent me this contract. It's a 12-page agreement. I really don't know anything about what I'm looking at or how it works or what the terminology might be. So we went ahead and we sat down. I explained to him all of the implications of what he was signing, the certain terms and commitments. It was a bi-monthly payment schedule, meaning that they pay him every other week for a fixed amount. And then he didn't have a business at that moment, so we sat down and I walked him through the steps on opening a business, right? Taking a look at what some of those initial expenses are, how he would be doing the billing, and how he would be collecting payment. We went line by line through that agreement and really, in essence, talked about all the potential, I don't want to say problems, but what could happen in certain situations, right? I made it this complicated legal language explained in plain English, and we set the parameters on what he needed and what he wanted. If there was any sort of discrepancy that he had, he went back and we did modifications and edits, and we got a finalized copy, and now that's all in place. Right, so I'm very happy for him. It's a new venture that he's doing, and he's really getting involved with some big names in the influential industry, in the influence with influencers and social media, right? Obviously, can't go into detail on what some of those names are, but I'm sure he's going to do well. And if you're watching this video, man, I wish you well. I have the utmost faith in you. Again, nothing I gave was financial, not financial planning, not legal advice, just simply looking at numbers, taking a look at the rules, and seeing how we're able to align ourselves with what his long-term goals are. What am I building, right? I'm also working on a few other projects, as I mentioned, that are in the launch phase right now. I'm pretty excited to see what that brings in the future, within the next year or two. Basically just planting the seed and working very hard and being diligent and intentional about some of my long-term projects. Where I started. So I started like a lot of people. I worked, I spent, and I thought more income would really fix all my problems, right? In reality, people say, oh, if you have more money, you'll be able to solve all your issues and you'll be happier. Well, having more money and correlating it with more happiness isn't necessarily true. Now, you might be looking at that and say, yeah, that's easy for you to say because if you have money, you're happy. And you must have money because you're happy and the things that you're saying. But that's not necessarily the case, right? So happiness is found inside of you, and money is simply a tool. It's a how do you call it? It's something that you utilize in order to better your living circumstance, and by consequence can create moments of happiness or allow you to have new experiences which lead to happiness. But money isn't everything, right? It really does nothing if your habits are not good, if you're not mindful about where every dollar is going, if you don't have a budget, right? If you're not intentional with what you're doing. So in my case, my life started to change when I moved from what I thought was the right process to actually having a written plan, a budget, and having a function and a goal for every dollar that I was receiving. Whether that was to save some of it, whether that was to go ahead and invest it. As I mentioned in the past, I'm big into the stock market, investing for long-term index funds. Very few individual stock picks. Some people invest in crypto, right? But I took some of that money and I made sure that I allocated it where I would see fit, improving my lifestyle, improving my living arrangements, maybe upgrading a vehicle, things of that nature, right? Second point is the simple money framework that I live by, right? Spend less than you make. Write a budget before the month begins and try to follow that budget, right? Save a starter emergency fund fast. It's important to have a fallback, right? There's a study that came out that over 57% of Americans right now don't have $1,000 for an emergency. That's not really a good thing, clearly, but it's always very important to keep some sort of funds in the back end. Try to find the best route to kill all of your consumer debt, right? There's a method, very famous method called the debt snowball method. And basically, you take all of your credit cards, and the one that you owe the least on, you go ahead and start paying it. Send all your extra money towards that credit card, or towards those credit cards. As let's say you have a $30,000 one, a $10,000 one, and then a $2,000 one, right? Well, knock out the $2,000 one first, get that out of the way, then do the $10,000 one, and then work hard and throw all your money at the $30,000 one. This is completely independent on what type of interest rate you have on these credit cards, right? We're not really looking at the interest rate. It is a factor, but right now the end goal is to start wiping away some of those creditors and some of those people that you owe money to, right? No matter what the steps are. Now, you may have to make certain sacrifices. You might not be able to go out and eat once a week, or you might not be able to go to that nightclub, but you might have to cut back on your budget for a birthday gift for a relative or family friends, or Christmas. People might be getting a candle this year instead of a watch or a pair of shoes, or whatever the case is. But ultimately, you have to do what's best for you and your family in your financial situation, right? So it's key to do that. You also want to try your very best to save 3 to 6 months of expenses, right? We've talked about this in the past. Making sure that you're saving these funds is key, because tomorrow you don't know what might happen. You may have an emergency or a situation where you are no longer employed, or you're in transition from one job to another, or your partner gets laid off, or whatever the case is, and now you need to make sure that you have these expenses, the savings per se, to cover your expenses, and it also gives you an opportunity to then reevaluate and reduce some of those expenses so that you're able to live on more. Invest a set percentage for the future once consumer debt is gone, right? So take a structure. What works for me is I try to live on less than what I make, and what I try to do practically is you take 50% and you put it into savings. You take 25% and you invest it, and then you take the other 25% and you utilize that to pay your bills, and whatever's left is money that you can go out and have a extra spending money, vacation money, whatever, however you want to classify it, right? Your main goal is to protect your home and your family. Make sure that you have all of those functions and all that, the capital for that, and rinse and repeat, right? It's not complicated. It's not very fun. It's not very exciting. It's pretty boring, but boring wins, and that's what you want to do. The reason this works is that most mistakes come from the psychology, right? Impulse buys feel good. Losses feel worse than gains. Now, feels are huge and later feels tiny. The fix is rules and automation, right? Making sure that you create a process, that you stick to it, and that you're able to integrate it and make it quite simple. Decide in writing before you act. Make the right action the easy action, right? Try to set up all of the parameters and all the roadmap to getting to where you want to get to with small steps. We call them baby steps, right? Step 1, step 2, step 3. Write everything out, where you're at, where you'd like to get to, and then write out the necessary step that you would need to go ahead and get there, right? My first real emergency hit, little story. The emergency fund that I kept was in a bad situation, and I really wasn't very diligent in making a conscious effort of maximizing that emergency fund that I had. Well, lo and behold, I had an emergency, and I didn't necessarily have the funds. So after I was able to get out of that hurdle, I made it a point and a vow to make sure that, look, you always have to have some sort of financial reserve so that you're able to progress and move forward. Again, if you don't have any savings right now, that's okay, but you got to look at, where am I at in life? What is my income? What are my expenses? How can I cut out some expenses that I don't need? And then start throwing at your credit cards while slowly working on accumulating and making a savings, right? It's kind of counterintuitive. It's a little difficult to create a savings while you're paying off your debt. But if you can get maybe $1, $2, possibly $3,000 at best with this financial situation, take $3,000 and keep it there in the bank, in a savings account, and then utilize the rest of the money to go ahead and pay your credit cards. You should be able to get out of debt and just continue and be intentional and diligent with this, right? The third point is how I run a budget and how I kill debt in real life. Zero based, every dollar gets a job. Buckets, bills and needs, sinking funds for planned wants. Emergency, do not touch. So, in essence, I try to automate and I try to make sure that my budget fits in line with my goals for the month, right? Let's say this month I have to replace my tires on my car, for example, right? Depending on how often you drive and how many miles you put on the car, the type of car that you have, you might have to replace tires more frequent than not. But you factor that in and you budget that in. Let's say tires cost $1,000 to replace all 4 tires. Well, for a lot of people, that's a big amount of money, and that's a big hit to take initially, right? So instead of factoring in $1,000 in 1 month, they're saying, hey, oh my God, how am I going to get out of this financial situation? What you do is you put away $150, $200 a month, and then by the time you need tires, you already have that money there, right? You're good to go, and you can go ahead and put it into place, right? What I try to do in addition to the budget side is I list every debt from smallest to largest, and I pay minimums on everything, as I was mentioning. For every extra dollar that I have, I pay the smallest balance until it's completely out and phased out. Once that's gone, I go to the next payment, and I factor this into my budget, right? If I say, okay, I owe Visa $1,200, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put $100 a month. My minimum is $30, so I pay $30, and I throw an extra $100, and you're able to pay off that balance, and before you know it, you're completely out of debt, right? So that's basically what I do with my budget specifically. It goes factoring in, and it goes allocating for any sort of expense I might have. Maybe somebody's birthday's coming up. Maybe there's a trip that I want to go out of town, and I want to make sure that I have funds allocated for that. Also, pro tip: what I try to do when it comes to going out of town, going on vacation, right? Everybody wants to go out of town and kind of disconnect, have a good time, and not really be super stressed about your finances. Uh, Initially, this might be very difficult, but you want to get to the point where you're able to go on vacation and leave with zero credit card debt, right? You've paid your trip, whether that's a hotel, an Airbnb, whether that's a cruise, or you paid the airfare, right? You want to go ahead and pay it either with, if you have the discipline, with a credit card, and then pay the card with cash that you have. Or if you don't have a credit card and you're working on getting out of debt, get out of debt first, right? Once you're out of debt, then you can go ahead and plan your vacation, and you pay it with a debit card, right? You have the money, you go ahead and pay it, so you don't have any sort of debt by the time you're able to go on vacation. Try to take cash when you go on vacation, $1,000, $1,500, whatever that budget you set in your mind mentally, and that will allow you to make it will allow you to keep better track of where you're at, and how much money you have allocated to utilize for that trip. If you're taking $1,000 and you have a 5-day trip, you say, okay, my budget is $200, food, expenses, if you want to go to museums, if you want to go to an art exhibit, or whatever the case may be, you factor that in, you budget that in for your trip. That way, you don't come back from your trip with debt, right? That's one of the largest mistakes that I see a lot of people do. They go on these amazing trips, $5,000-$10,000 to Europe, or they go on a cruise, they go out of town, they go out of the country, whatever the case may be, and then they come back and they're in debt, and they're working, and then they're complaining that gas has gone up 10 cents, and the first of the month they can't go out for the next 2 weeks, and now they're buying food in bulk in order to save, and they can't go out on a Friday lunch or whatever the case is. That's really no way to live. It's pretty financially irresponsible. But again, with this information, with these tips, and with these tricks, guys, I've mentioned this in the past. There's tons of information out there. Please, please, please look into all the information. Try to utilize the resources that you have around you, the internet, ChatGPT, YouTube videos similar to mine. There's tons and tons and tons of content out there. Go ahead and digest all of that. Audio books, visual books, regular books, everything. Whatever sticks and works for you, go ahead and utilize that, right? Try to find a method that is applicable for you, and that one that you think will work best for your need and your personality type, right? So the next point is a small client story that I was mentioning. I'm going to go into a bit more detail. So I had this one client, the videographer. He came to me. He needed an LLC, which is a limited liability corporation, and a clean business structure. We set the goal. We wrote down what his long-term outlook was, how he wanted to do it, if it was just going to be him or there were other people involved, and then we created the structure. We formed the LLC here in the state of Florida. We utilize Sunbiz. Explained to him the whole process, what an authorized representative was, and a registered agent of record, and how that process worked. Once he got approved by the state, we went ahead and we filed with the IRS for an employment identification number. I helped him out with opening a business bank, a separate business and personal money on day one. Decided how to pay yourself, basically saying, once you get the funds, where would they go to? Do you need one bank account or two bank accounts? Some people like to structure, for example, you have money coming into one bank account, and then money leaves from another bank account. It's much easier to do accounting practices that way. And also you're able to better manage your funds, because you know that, okay, if I got paid $2,000 in one account, well, when I go ahead and I go to pay my light bill or my home or whatever it is, I paid from a different account. Well, if I have it on auto pay, they're not going to be able to overdraft, because there's no money in there until I transfer that money over and I'm ready to pay it. Small tip, separate side comment. A lot of people put their things on auto pay. That works if you're financially disciplined. I can tell you that for me, in my specific case, I set reminders, both calendar reminders, and I use my alarms to remind me. I don't use autopay. I don't want anybody drafting funds from my account unless it's absolutely necessary. I go ahead and I program them. I structure it out and I make sure that the money gets there and when it's due, right? There's a series of reasons behind that. First, the main one is that I don't want anybody touching my money, right? Unless I send you the money, that's one thing, but you never know what may happen if there's a extra charge. I've had cases that people come to me and they say, they double charge me or they triple charged me, or now they have to go and verify and wait and do a what is this called? They do an inspection process and they audit it and they do like a fraud check, and it's a whole series of things. So it starts getting complicated. So long story short, don't do auto pay unless you're diligent about it and you're sure that the funds will be there, right? So going back to my client, we went ahead and we decided how the whole structure was going to work. We worked out a budget and a calendar structure for the business. When he was going to get paid, what he was going to do with that money. Make sure that he put all of his company expenses, whether it was cameras, film, the SIM cards, a stand, whatever he utilized, a certain vehicle and mileage expenses that are allotted for, whatever he utilized for that business. And we're going to sit down a little later on in the year and we'll take a look at everything together. So yeah, that's basically my experience with that one client. Again, going into some detail, we went into the agreement. We explained, what his part of the commitment was versus what the other person's obligation was to him. Who owns the content and the footage? What are some of the royalties or the rights on that footage? If it's the NDA, because he had to sign an NDA to make sure that he wasn't able to, obviously he can't talk about who this client is or what they do. How many revisions and what counts as a change in scope. Reorganizing the rules and the setup. Exclusivity and certain conflicts, payment schedule, milestones, what might trigger late fees, what happens if either party cancels, right? What are all the consequences and all the pros and cons with structuring this out, right? Why this matters. Chaos kills cash flow, clarity protects it, right? It's real simple. You don't need a fancy business to use these guardrails. Use them for freelance work, side jobs, and partnerships with friends. These are basically principles that you can apply in everyday world, right? In anything having to do with business or finance. And basically, in short, what I teach clients in one sentence is goals first, then rules, then automation, and then accountability, right? You have to be clear about what you're looking to do, how you're going to get there, what is the easiest way that you can streamline this process, and who is responsible for what, especially accountability on one side, right? It's very easy to say, so on and so forth, this person did this to me, or, I can't believe that, they fooled me or whatnot. But it's much more productive to look and see what you did, right? What actions did you take? How could you have made the situation different or better, right? Where did you neglect or what did you fail to do, and be fully accountable for what you do, right? You can't control what others do to you, but you can certainly control how you act to their actions, right? You can only control your own actions. So accountability is key. So point number 5, non-negotiables and your action plan for tonight. Some of my non-negotiables are emergency fund before vacations, pay your debt, pay your credit cards before you go on any vacations. If you can't pay your cards, don't go on vacations. Try to use cash wherever possible. If you're initially trying to get out of debt, you don't need a fancy car. Try to use your cash for cars wherever possible. No new payments without a written 1-year plan. Try to have everything structured out. Make sure that you protect your house and your family. Put that first. If you find it to be appropriate and if you have the means, try to give something up to every month. Generosity keeps the money flowing in its place. Whether that's giving back to a family member or a friend or someone in need or homeless or a certain charity or cause or something that you believe in, it's always good to give back. What I track month to month, income in and expenses out, savings rate, the total amount of debt that I have, the balance of my emergency fund, net worth, and if it's not measured and accounted for, it usually drifts and goes astray. Another tip that I tend to do is you have to check your bank and check your debts every day to make sure that they don't either go up or go down depending on what your goal is. Um, I have a interesting story to share with you. So I had a coworker once that he had things automated, but he wasn't necessarily checking his bank account the right way. Well, 2 or 3 weeks came by and he had to pay his rent. And since it was automated, when they went to draw from the rent, the landlord called him, said that he got a bounce from the bank account. Well, what happened was that the funds that he was receiving were going into a different account. But seeing as he wasn't checking his bank account, he hadn't realized that. So when the landlord went to draw on the what he perceived to be the main account with the funds, there were no funds there. So check your balances, check everything, your stocks, your portfolio, your crypto. You have to manage your money. Be diligent. Look at where your funds are so that nothing goes away, so that you're accountable, so you can make changes and improvements and take care of it, right? If you don't take care of your money, it's gonna leave. I mean, it's simple as that. Your money, your debt, you have to be on top of it. You have to be mindful about it, right? 4 things you can do tonight, guys. The first one is write 3 numbers: cash on hand, your total amount of debt, and your target emergency fund. Very important, guys. Strongly recommend that you guys do this. Step 2, set up 3 buckets, 3 categories. First one would be bills and needs. The second one is sinking funds for planned wants: vacation, trips, shoes, clothes, phone, computer, whatever you want. And the third one would be emergency do not touch fund. Right? Step 3, pick the smallest amount of debt, send extra payments tonight, even if it's $10, guys, right? You want to go ahead and be intentional and try your very best to lower those balances. And step 4, delete 1 shopping app and cancel 1 unused subscription. Book your Sunday money meeting, right? I say Sunday, but it could be any day of the week. Basically, just take 1 day of the week, sit down for an hour, and write down, okay, what are some of my expenses? Go through your credit card bill and your bank statements, right? What are some of my expenses? What am I being charged for? The other day I saw that I was being charged for a one of these subscription, pro premium service subscriptions, and I hadn't used it in like 4 months, right? So I was able to cancel that, and I got back the $10 or the $12, and then I stopped all the future payments. But it's something that I hadn't realized, right? An old gym membership that maybe I haven't gone in a couple of months because I changed the locations or where I was living or whatever the case is, right? Go ahead and cancel that and really look and see where your expenses are, right? I had an audiobook service and I wasn't using it as frequently because there's tons of other content that I was absorbing, but I had completely forgot that I had that expense, right? So go ahead and sit down and delete these unused subscriptions. Shopping apps, as well as anything that kind of makes your life easier, whether you like to believe it or not. All of these, Target Express, delivered to you, or Amazon, or Uber Eats is one of the worst ones because they put a major markup. If you have no debt and you want to stay that way, and you want to go out to eat or you want to go pick up something to eat, go ahead and do that, right? If not, you're paying a premium for convenience. And if you have the money and you have the funds, God bless you, more power to you. Go ahead and do that, right? But typically when you're working on getting out of debt, when you're working on figuring these situations out, you want to not incur any of these additional expenses. So guys, once more time, why listen to me? I have lived this for 15 years. I run real operations. As I mentioned, I own properties, I have vehicles, I have businesses. I write out my budgets every month. And outside of real estate, I am financially free and I am debt free. I'm working on these new projects and I use the same rules when I grow them and as they flourish into what they're looking to be. I'm not perfect, right? In no way, sense of the word. I also don't believe in perfection because the minute that you think you're perfect, you never have any room to grow or any room to get better. What I am is disciplined, and what I am is intentional, and I am mindful when it comes to my finances, my income, my expenses, my budgeting, and where all my money is going to. If you want a plan that works in real life, this is it. And guys, to close up today, I'm going to leave you with this thought. Money is a behavior first and math second. Pick one move and do it now. Stack the next one week after week. If this helped you, please share this video with somebody who needs it, who could utilize these rules and utilize this content to survive a bad day and to really help out their overall financial needs. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you. See you guys next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.